first week you guys are back and you're adjusting to this new normal with the functional groups. And for volleyball, you have the unique, interesting challenge this year of, or at least so far, of being out on the grass, out on featherbed. So can you just walk me through how that's been going and what the functional groups look like and what the energy has been around practices and the team this first week?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So we are lucky enough that we're small enough just to have 2 functional groups. So we all practice mostly on the same days, one right after the other. And it's kind of nice because we kind of, like, when you're coming into practice, if you're the second group, you can kind of see the first group. And then if you kind of linger at the end of the first practice, you can kind of see the second group and say hi, which is nice and makes it feel like more like we're kind of almost practicing together. Playing on the grass has been an experience. It's getting better every day, but we're not used to like having to deal with bugs and the sun and slipping on the grass. So that has been a very touch and go experience. And then yesterday we were setting up our net and the pole like shot out of the ground. It like broke. We had to get creative and get like a different outdoor net, set it up in practice. So it's all about like, we've just been having to constantly adjust, but it's been really, really nice to be back and playing with everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of, when you exchange groups and you change your, group 1 to group 2, it's kind of hard to like say bye to them because you want to all be playing together with all positions. So that's been kind of frustrating. But it's also been nice to kind of doing the small group work, and we've been able to really incorporate our first years into that as well, which has been nice. So yeah, a lot of adjusting. We definitely miss the indoors and we definitely miss playing all together, but obviously we're making the best of what we have, and I think everyone's having a lot of fun. So
that's great. That's really funny about just kind of like adapting, like what else can be thrown at us, It's I guess my second question kind of along the same lines in terms of like team activities and just things that are maybe off the court. Like how have you adapted to kind of include everybody on the team and get the first years on board and kind of like a very different environment from a normal year?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges so far is that our team is used to being like a very close team across all classes, and part because we're so small and also just because that's our team culture. So it's been really hard not going into school, starting preseason and getting to know each other really well and kind of we got here after the first years and kind of having to bring them in after they had already been here for a few weeks. So we try whenever we can to do outdoor grass circles for dinner, for just hanging out at night and talking and trying to play some kind of socially distant game. Again, we are super lucky because our team is less than 15 people. So as long as we're in level 1, we can all hang out together in a socially distant outdoor format. So it's been fun when we've gotten to get together, but it is difficult trying to navigate meeting these new people and getting them to, trust us and trust the fact that we want them to be successful and have their best interests in mind, even though they don't know us as well as they usually would know us by this time of the year.
Right.
Yeah, we've also been making use of Zoom too. I think, when levels change, we have certain restrictions on when we can get together. So we've played some Zoom bingo. We've also played some Zoom categories, which were both really fun. So I think we just kind of, have to adjust to whatever the college is doing and find ways to continue to play games together. And those kind of experiences allow us to just get to know each other better. And that's just kind of been our focus since we've been here.
Awesome. So in terms of the actual, this is what I asked field hockey, and it was pretty illuminating. It was a little bit interesting question of just how is a typical day going? I guess this is really the first week of the new normal, of the typical, with everything kind of all in cohesion with each other. But can you just walk me through like basically a typical day in terms of like lifts, practice, classes? Like how are you managing that time and like what does that look like in 2020?
Yeah, Izzy, do you want to go first for this one?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's obviously different than what we're used to. We're used to being kind of out and about during the day, walking to and from classes, seeing each other at lunch, then, hustling to practice from class sometimes, or just, being in the training room like an hour early to, get taped and stuff like that. So everything has now kind of flipped. So we're spending a lot of time on Zoom, which is tough. I think everyone's kind of felt that fatigue. And honestly, I get headaches from staring at the computer so much, so that's not been a great thing. But the nice thing is that we do have practice, so that kind of allows the brain to like reset and get outside. So that's been a really great part of my day, is just looking forward to practice. And then I think our lifts have also been super nice. Just being outside, like we're used to being indoors for most of our season, all of our lifts and all of our practices. So being outside in the nice weather and like fresh air has actually been really, really nice. Really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, and with lifts, we actually had a lift. We had our first lift with other teams on Saturday. So it's out on the lacrosse field, which is really nice because it's very spacious, and we got to lift like within our functional groups with our own space, but also alongside other teams. And it was kind of the first time since I've been back that I felt like that kind of athletics camaraderie of like supporting other teams and just getting excited for other teams, which has been really, really nice, because I think that's one of my favorite things about the fall season, is that there are so many sports going on, so many different teams to support, and it's just been definitely lift has been a really positive experience so far. But one thing that's kind of been weird about, like, I have lab a lot of days, so I go straight from practice to lab, and I've had to, since we don't have access to the locker room, I've had to change like in the bathroom of the KINSC, which has been weird. So just again, like just trying to be just adjust as much as we can and plan ahead as much as we can. But like Izzy said, it's just touch and go and kind of figuring things out as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one other question that I have is what are you doing to kind of foster, especially as captains or just as a team, like kind of like a competitive atmosphere? Obviously, like with no varsity matches in the fall, like it's a lot different. So like, how are you kind of making sure the team still has that competitive edge and like that competitive experience? I know field hockey talked a little bit about how they have functional units and they're kind of like competing against each other on certain benchmarks that are being, Coach Cox is telling them like, oh, this team did this, and like they're kind of figuring that out, and like it's been a really fun thing. So I'm just curious like what volleyball is doing in terms of like keeping that competitive edge going.
Yeah, I think our team we're a very competitive team all around. I think off season is the time where our competitive nature really comes out a lot, because we're such a supportive team of each other during the season that when we're out of season, we're kind of competing for best times, best, like the highest number that we're able to lift. So this kind of unique experience of starting off in what is kind of an off season has been nice. And especially in lift, I've heard people like yelling across the field to each other that they can lift more than that. And kind of within practices, I know, so our functional groups are majority split up by position. So I'm in like the hitting functional group, and within the hitters, we've been really competitive about who can hit the most balls to a certain spot, and kind of just getting the first years in immediately at what our team culture is, of what our competitive nature looks like. And I think our best thing about our team is that a lot of people lead by example, and I think it's easy to follow along when everyone's kind of one leading themselves and just like buying in at every point.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we are still very committed to our team standards and like our team goals. And while we know right now is non-traditional in terms of what's happening, you know, in the coming years, sports will come back and we will play in the conference again. And when that happens, we want to be prepared. And there's no telling when officially that will happen, to be honest, but I can say, like, I know if I'm, you know, still on this team when that happens, like, I want to be ready to go and be ready to play and challenge the opponents that have given us a hard time in the past. You know, and I think that drive to continue to move around in the Centennial Conference still exists. And while it might not be at the forefront of everyone's minds, I think that it's definitely at the forefront of mine and a lot of the team, and kind of instilling that competitive fire into the first years and showing them, you know, what Haverford Volleyball is about is kind of what we can use this time for.
Awesome. Yeah, we talked a little bit in our staff meetings about how like this season is almost kind of like an opportunity for, especially for underclass. I mean, for everybody, but for some of the underclassmen to kind of have like a softer landing spot in terms of like, you know, their ramp up. Like one of the things that the fall semester normally would provide is the fact that for the fall athletes, they're like going through customs and they're going through everything that comes with being a first year, and they're also playing matches, you know? So like, it's a little bit of a softer landing spot in terms of, obviously they're navigating a very unprecedented world right now, but in terms of that, it's a little bit of a softer landing spot. So I think that's interesting.